Good morning, everybody. Best effing dad here. Today's December 8th. I want to talk about, again, why it is too early to say whether or not Omicron has milder cases. And in case you've been under a rock, U.S. has gone up to 120,000 average cases a day. It was 114,000 yesterday, but 120,000 is our average now. Just remember a couple of weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving, we were down there around the 75,000 mark, and now we're up to 120,000. We will hit the surge. And this is a surge you're seeing from the Thanksgiving gathering. This is not Omicron. This is still Delta. Michigan's super hot, and you guys know the story. You know, Ohio and New York. I'm going to tell you, New York City's not looking good. It's 2,300 cases a day. It's the average. I think all of those red areas is kind of surrounded New York City, and Chicago is also 2,300 cases a day. So I think that's going to really drive up the numbers. Remember, the New York, New Jersey area is the most densely populated area of the United States. So it's a matter of time before that whole New Jersey area blows up. Stay safe. And also, the spread is coming down south to South Carolina. But remember, Florida is getting hot. The south is getting hot again, like I said it would. And it's probably still remnants of a little bit of Delta, but you're going to see a big mixture of Omicron. It is going to blow up the South again. I want to talk about, so anyway, get vaccinated. In the news, Pfizer announced that their third shot, their booster, offers protection against Omicron. The markets have gone up, but I want to spend the majority of this time talking about why it is still way too early to claim that Omicron has milder cases, even though that's what you're seeing in the news report. Dr. V, did you see the video about the doctor who's treating the patients saying it's milder cases? Listen, let me give you some good reasons why it's too early to say. Number one, remember South Africa, listen to me, South Africa has already gone through two, and this is the third variant of concern. They first started with the South African variant, which Delta beat out. We were all concerned about the South African variant. It came after the UK variant. And then it had the Delta variant this summer. At the beginning of the summer, it had another surge with the Delta variant, and now it has the Omicron surge. So there might be some natural immunity, there might be some post-infection immunity in the population because they've gone through two major surges. They had the wild type surge, technically, right, at the beginning, then the South African surge, variant surge, now the Delta surge, and now the Omicron surge. So there might be some built-in immunity. So there might be a pre-priming of the population, okay, and that might be what's resulting in milder cases. Now, for anti-vaxxers or people who don't want to get vaccinated, who thinks this is way overblown, this is good news. This means that if you've had the prior infection, you are offered some form of immunity, which is what the scientists and doctors have been telling you, but that number is waning. Your post-infection immunity is waning. The data on that is getting very, very clear. The thing with South Africa is that it's been hit with three waves: the initial wild-type wave, the South African variant wave, the Delta wave, and now the Omicron wave. So that's number one. There might be some post-infection immunity that's already in the system. Number two, why it might not be mild, why it might be milder. Now, so far, the initial patients who have come down with Omicron in South Africa have been the younger population in the 30s and 40s, which we already know do better, right? So we have to wait and see if what happens when it gets into the older population, what happens when it gets to an older country like Italy, where the average population is older, etc., right? So we have to see what happens when it gets into the older population and immunocompromised population. It's too early to comment at all about the reports about 5-year-old kids and younger coming down with it, so just don't waste any energy worrying about that yet. There are early reports that hospitalizations are going up, which I would expect, which leads me to the next reason this is super important. Remember, so when the pandemic first started, when someone catches COVID, there is a timeline of what happens. The milder cases resolve themselves in 7 to 14 days. They recover. They'll say, hey, I survived, but boy, it was mild, or I had a cough, or it was a horrible flu, it was really bad, you know. The milder cases recover first. You don't get the data on the sick patients yet. You only get the data on hospitalizations, and that's why you see hospitalizations come up. But you have no, listen to me, right now, you have no ability to say whether or not it causes more death, because the people are not dying yet. Remember, we are 2 years into this pandemic. We have better science, better technology, better treatments, better hospitalization capacity and skills to treat patients to keep them from dying. So we are stretching this out. Like you have patients now in the early days of the pandemic, maybe spend 5, 6, 7, 10, 11 days on the vent, then die. Now that average number is, you hear all sorts of stories about people being on 2, 3, 4, maybe months of the ventilator and then come off, because we're just getting better at our treatment. So as a reminder, there was a time in the early pandemic, like April, May, and I was on YouTube just yelling at people saying, listen, the case fatality rate right now in France, for example, because France was going through the surge, was 20%. And I had all these negative naysayers sitting there going, Dr. V, you know, there's 7 billion people in this world and there's only, you know, 20,000 cases. And so if you do the division, your chances are 0.00000. I'm like, shut up. That's not how statistics work. At that moment in time, back in May of 2020, if you caught COVID, your chances of dying were 20%. And then in France. Now, maybe not if you live in America, but in France at that time, it was bad. And then the surge hit the United States, my city of Houston. At one point in 2020, if you caught COVID and you were hospitalized, your chances of dying, not being sick, but dying because you were in the hospital was 33%, 1 in 3. And so the smart people would be like, I better not be in Houston. So that's what I did. That summer I left Houston. I was like, it is too hot here. And I left for Albuquerque, all right? So now with science and antibody treatments and, you know, prone position ventilation, trying to delay ventilation, all that, and lower pressures on the ventilators, you know, we've gotten that, and as cases have resolved, that case fatality rate has dropped down from 20%, 10%, 8%, now it's sitting at a nice 2.5%. So that's taken, you know, it was a good year and a half before we could say, okay, that case fatality rate is really 2.5%. So it's way too early to sit there and go, oh, no, it doesn't, Omicron doesn't kill anybody. So the next person who sits here and says, you know, like, there's been 100 cases of Omicron and 0 deaths. See, I'll take my chances, dude. Like, that's the same thing as saying, look, I crossed the street without looking both ways and I made it to the other side. Ha, ha, ha. I drove drunk and I made it home okay. Ha, ha, ha. I had unprotected sex and she didn't get pregnant. Ha, ha, ha. Dude, it's just a matter of time. And the last thing I'll say is maybe Omicron looks milder because there is something about the population, of the African population. There's a bigger question about why is it that Africa itself has not blown up with coronavirus. And you might say, well, it's underreporting, it's technology, it's whatever. Well, maybe, or there might be something about that population that offers natural protection against the virus. A very good example of this is malaria. You know, one of the classic case studies that we learn in medicine is sickle cell anemia, which African Americans have sickle cell, and then they trace the origins back to Africa. And what happens is, in an area that's endemic with malaria, if you have sickle cell, you are offered some natural protection against malaria in the sense that the symptoms are milder. So there might be something in that population, I'm just speculating, that offers them some sort of protection against coronavirus. We just don't know that yet. So to compare what's happening in South Africa and Botswana and these African countries and say, hey, I live in Kentucky or Tennessee or wherever, Nova Scotia, anywhere, and see the cases are mild. Look, dude, it's just foolish. Just foolish. It's just too early. You gotta wait. What we know is definitely a booster. Seems to be protective. I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't stress out about early reports like, oh, it might be evading immunity. That's all headline grabbing shit, man. Like, don't worry about that stuff. Get your booster. Get vaccinated if you're not vaccinated. Their early data suggests that your prior infection immunity is not as effective against Omicron. So if you're on the fence about getting boosted after having COVID, I would highly recommend you get it. Still wear your mask, social distance just a little bit longer. No, there are not infinite variations. There's not infinite mutations. I've done this before. I've done that video before. You can check that out. Stay safe. It's going to be a very crazy next couple of months. And here in the United States, it's winter months. People are behaving very badly. Y'all stay safe out there. Happy holidays. I'll see you for the next update.